Hit recording, go.
I'd like to turn over the meeting to the interpreter for an announcement.
Buenas noches a todos. Estamos en la sesión del Consejo Municipal y Consultivo de la Costa de Sonoma de la fecha del 19 de septiembre del 2024 y servicios de interpretación al español disponibles. Si están con nosotros...
Ricardo, can you speak up? We're not getting you very loud over here.
Is that the Owl's audio on?
The Owl's audio is on and up, and Debbie's was clear earlier.
Okay, give me 1 second, please.
Thank you.
It's really for the online people, right?
Yeah. Yep, we're already on there. Oh, yeah.
Is it better
Yep. That's what yep, we're good.
Okay. Buenas
good.
noches a todos. Bienvenidos a la sesión del 19 de septiembre del 2024 del Consejo Municipal Asesor de la Costa de Sonoma y servicios de interpretación al español disponibles para las personas que están con nosotros por Zoom. Por favor, seleccionen el idioma de su preferencia en la barra inferior de su pantalla de Zoom, dándole clic al globo terráqueo en la opción que dice interpretación y escojan inglés o el español. Muchas gracias.
Take the witcher.
Time for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to the left.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any abstention? Any opposed? Oh.
Because there's nobody online. So.
Right, we don't need to do roll call, no one online. There's a visual on all of us.
Oh.
Bien, y no hace falta pasar lista porque estamos presentes visualmente.
Next, we're going to move on to the consent agenda.
A continuación pasamos al orden del día de consentimiento.
The only item on the consent agenda
El único
are the
punto
minutes.
del calendario de consentimiento son las actas.
Do we have any discussion on the minutes? Anything that needs
¿Tenemos
to be
algo que
pointed
hablar
out?
sobre estas actas? ¿Algo que indicar? ¿Algo que señalar?
There we go. Now it's fixed.
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks.
All right. So if there's no discussion
Muy
on
bien.
the
No habiendo nada que
agenda,
comentar sobre el orden del
is there a move to pass the consent agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposed? Thank you. Now we're going to move on to statement of conflict of interest. Do any of the MACs have a conflict of interest? Yes.
I'll let
Well, you go first.
Well, okay. I have livestock and what? That it?
That's it. You just while I am a cattle rancher, my operation is not considered a AFO or a CAFO. Therefore, I do not fall under the proposed measure being discussed this evening. I don't believe I have any conflict of interest, but I just wanted to put that out there to everybody.
That's I said the same
Yeah,
thing.
thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. So do the CMACs have a report or a comment they'd like to make that on items not on the agenda?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Just a couple of things that concern us in the Timber Cove area. The first one that we're most concerned about, because we're not seeing any progress anywhere, is the availability of low-cost housing. It's really affecting our economy. It's very difficult to find employees. It's difficult to have a place for the next generation to get started. And we're very concerned about that. The other thing is charging stations. I expect Scott Farmer will speak to that in a little bit, but we're very interested in the Timber Cove area in a charging station for vehicles at Windermere Point State Park. There's a great place there with a transformer already. And then at the Stillwater Cove Regional Park, County Parks, in their day parking area. And we'd really like to talk to County Parks about some options that we've come up with. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, do you have anything? Brian?
No, not right now.
Jenny?
No, thank you.
Elizabeth?
No.
Jill?
No.
John?
No.
Right. I don't have anything that, anything for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public that would like to speak on items not on the agenda?
Isn't Linda first?
No, first item's not on the agenda, then Linda.
No, 7 is
Public
public's not
comment.
on the agenda. Public comment.
Oh, yeah.
It's got-
So we,
It's 5. It's
no, it's comments not on the agenda for the public is, then there's comments that are on the agenda. All right,
Not on the agenda.
this is not on the agenda. Scott, would you like to go to the podium? Scott Foster? I'm sorry, Farmer.
Is this good enough here?
As long as Meeting Al can pick you up, but
All right. Okay, I'm just gonna read this, so it's succinct.
thank you.
Scott Farmer, Timber Cove. I would like to thank the 51 Frontier customers that responded to my call for comments about their Frontier customer experience. It made a difference. A competing FFA grant application to deploy fiber optic internet infrastructure for the greater Timber Cove is still in play with the CPUC. We hope to hear good news in a couple of weeks. I'd also like to acknowledge the progress made by state parks since our review of at the November Coast MAC meeting. Reef Campground has reopened, albeit dry. One must bring one's own water. Nonetheless, it's open. Fisk Mill Cove remains closed. However, progress is being made to remove hazardous trees. Post-winter tree debris from storms is being cleaned up along the Caltrines right-of-way 2, and extensive culvert repair is nearly complete from Coast Highway 1 mile markers 30 through 54, 24 miles. Regarding EV fast charging along our coast, Tesla was interested in Bodega Bay and Walala. Commercial entity in Bodega Bay was interested to cooperate with Tesla. Then Tesla fired the entire EV infrastructure team. When a few staff were rehired, we were able to revive the Bodega Bay discussion, but Walala was removed as an interest by Tesla. Meanwhile, federal funds were available to the county to expand EV charging. Burnville, Occidental, and Bodega Bay made it into the grant application, but nothing north along the coast. The next fast charger is Fort Bragg. We plan to work with state parks and hopefully regional parks to use state funds to install general public accessible fast chargers along Coast Highway 1 in Sonoma County. I ask for support from the Coast MAC and Supervisor Linda Hawkins in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any other comments from the public in the building for items not on the agenda? Do you have a comment for an item not on the agenda?
I'm just waving at the gentleman to your right there.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Che, do we have anyone online that would like to comment on items not on the agenda?
Would you like me to bring Tina into the room? Tina, you
Absolutely.
can, okay. Tina, you can unmute yourself.
And this would be when Tina unmutes, let me know.
Shay, I'm having trouble accessing the host functions. Can you bring her in?
Yep.
With a comment. No problem.
Okay.
Debbie.
Right, Kenny, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. If you could state your full name, please.
Sure. It's Tina Podolak from Bodega Bay. I'm calling with a follow-up question concerning an item that was discussed at the May MAC meeting around the consolidation plan for the Wildlands Conservancy permit referred to the Coastal Commission. And I believe there was a letter that Linda and Beth were going to present, or at least Linda was, concerning scheduling local public hearings or hearing. And I'm just wanting to know the update on that letter.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you very much for the question. This letter is still in play. We have had a couple of administrative issues come up with it that we are dealing with. This did come up in administration discussion on Friday. We were hoping to have this ready for presentation today, but we had a couple of hitches on that. Do we have anything else we can add, Che, to that at this time?
I'd say we have the final edits today that were sent over to staff.
Thank you. Okay.
And
Thank you
will
very
that
much.
is that available online or to the public? A copy of that letter?
Will that be available online to the public?
At the next MAC meeting, it will be.
Oh,
On the agenda
it's not on the agenda,
for next.
but we can make sure it's on the agenda for next time. But can we put that on the Supervisor Hopkins web page, or is there something else we can do? Because it didn't need a vote.
I would say we attach it as correspondence to the next agenda for the MAC.
We attach it as a correspondence to the next meeting in November.
In November. And do you know when
All
in
right.
November that meeting is?
21st.
Okay, the reason I
November
raised
21st.
that is because this issue is partially going to be discussed, I believe, at the Coastal Commission meeting in San Francisco in November, early November, the 13th. So it would be nice to see that correspondence by then.
All right, well, thank you. We will follow up on this, Tina. Thank you very, very much for your
Okay.
question and bringing this issue
Thanks.
forward.
Are there any other folks online? Seeing none?
All right. Then that'll end the discussion time for items not on the agenda. Next, we're going to move to Supervisor Hopkins and staff for a report.
Thank you so much, Chair Bruzzone. I'll give a couple of updates on things that have just happened, and then I'll do a preview of some upcoming items before the Board of Supervisors. So recently, the Board of Supervisors did adopt a climate resilience comprehensive action plan, which is trying to bring county government to carbon neutrality by 2030. And we did actually have dollars attached to that. So we are making an investment in trying to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions as a county. Also wanted to share an exciting possible addition to Fort Ross State Park. Save the Redwoods League has gone public that they do have an opportunity to purchase 1,600 acres that is adjacent to Fort Ross State Park, and they are trying to now raise $16 million by the end of the year in order to accomplish that. I'll be attending their annual meeting this weekend up at Timber Cove. Coming up, we have the EIFD preview coming up next Wednesday, the 25th. Happy to answer any questions about that. On October 8th, the Board of Supervisors will be considering the on-site wastewater treatment system mapping study and analysis. And then on October 15th, we will have a general plan status update. Of course, only portions of that are relevant to the coast, as the vast majority of the coast is covered within the local coastal plan up to that ridgeline. Nonetheless, you are impacted by some of the things that happen on the other side of the ridgeline. And in some cases, we actually have properties, some of which is in the coastal zone and some of which which is outside, or just instances where literally across the road is outside and it would be under the purview of the general plan. Also wanted to share that our LCP is anticipated to be heard by the California Coastal Commission at their meeting in San Francisco, November 13th through the 15th. We do not have any additional details. There has not been an agenda published. We do not know what day it is. And so hopefully we'll share that information out as soon as we have that information. And I also wanted to share some happy news, which some of you may have noticed. The Fort Ross Road repair is complete in time for winter storms. Really exciting about that. This is a pretty serious long-term fix. The repair ran from Smith Ridge Road to south of Nistra Road. And huge shout out to the Fort Ross VFD and also CAL FIRE for their support, and also all the residents who I know were inconvenienced substantially. But thank you for your patience, and really, really thrilled that public infrastructure and our awesome team over there was able to get this done and get it done right and get it done in time for winter. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and hand it back to the chair.
Thank you very much for your report, Supervisor Hopkins. Do any of the MAC have questions for Supervisor Hopkins? Jill, do you have any questions?
No, I just wanted to say that I had a chance to listen to her interview on whatever the county podcast, and I thought she did a great job, and I'm gonna definitely circulate it to the people in this community, because I think it's a wonderful way to get to see a little bit of who our supervisor is. So bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may respond with another sort of a compliment back in your direction, Jill, I heard the wonderful news. I saw it on Facebook that you passed your final inspection, and I cannot wait to go to your restaurant and check it out. So congratulations on that. And if anyone doesn't know, we have an awesome MAC member who is also a small business owner and working to revitalize our food options out in Jenner, which is super exciting.
Thank you. And I have to interject something I should have done in the beginning of the meeting. My apologies. I would like to introduce our newest MAC member, John Laughlin, is just joined us. This is his first meeting. He's the alternate for Bodega Bay. Thank you very much, John, for putting in the application and going through the process with us. Do you have any comments for Supervisor Hopkins? Do you want to comment on her discussion at all?
No, not at this time.
Thank you
very much.
Elizabeth, do you have anything?
No.
Jenny?
Very good.
No. Brian?
Well, I, for one, am very excited about this LCP hearing at the Coastal Commission, and would be very excited if we can move on and get that passed and get it go forward with that.
Absolutely. Carolyn? No. Okay. Scott?
Thank you for all the great news about Fort Ross and Timber Cove area. Life's good. Thank you.
Okay, I had a question.
So Supervisor Hopkins, I too am very excited about this LCP meeting at the Coastal Commission coming up. I think we're all hoping that we're able to put a bow on it and kick it over the finish line when the supervisors meet in January and then move on. But thank you very much for all the hard work.
It's been such a quick process.
All right. Does anyone here in the audience have a comment for Supervisor Hopkins?
Yes.
Just one moment, please, dear. I'm so sorry. If you could go up to the podium and then state your name.
Nice podium.
Sorry, we have to make do sometimes.
Okay, I'm Chris Kilgore, and we have a newly formed Central Sonoma Coast Firewise community. It's the same area as the Timber Cove Fire Protection District. So I'm really interested in all the properties in that area. And I understand that Save the Redwoods purchased a SOPR property that was something like 350 acres. Is that purchase complete? And should I be talking to Save the Redwoods about their being part of the Firewise community?
I can check in with Save the Redwoods. I've been tracking sort of a number of potential acquisitions with them, and I'm not sure which one, or if it's sort of a sub parcel of another parcel, but I am aware that, SOPR is attempting to essentially, liquidate, to divest of all of their holdings in really in the North Coast. And so there's a lot of generational opportunities to acquire that property, but I can definitely check in with them this weekend and circle back to you if you send an email, and then also find the best contact person for you to be able to work with at Save the Redwoods, if that would work for you.
That would be great. So, wow, 1,600 acres. Is that what you said? Did I mishear that?
Yes, more than 1,600.
So, wow, I would really like to know what properties those are. They are part of our Firewise community, and I think Save the Redwoods will be delighted to be part of the Firewise community, but they do need a heads up. So, yeah, I'll maybe I'll just send it to Che. Yeah.
Perfect, and we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience that has a comment for Supervisor Hopkins? All right. Hey, do we have anyone online?
We do not.
We do not. All right. Thank you again, Supervisor Hopkins. All right. So we are now going to go to comments, public comments on items on the agenda. Do any of the MAC have comments for items on the agenda? No? All right.
Clarification. Basically, it's measure J. So will we be able to comment after the presentation?
Absolutely. I'm just following procedure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anyone online that has a comment for an item on the agenda? All right. Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to our presentation from Andrew Smith, Sonoma County Agricultural Commissioner. He's here to talk to us this evening about Measure J and anything else that we might want to discuss with him.
Well, I really appreciate the.
Andrew, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium.
You're in trouble, the formal podium.
Should I sit on the podium? I feel like I should. Thank you for inviting me here this evening. It's a pleasure and an honor. I lived on Moscow Road for a couple and a half years and grew up in almost West County. So it was really delightful to come out here, see the fog rolling in, and think I should be going to some place with like a fireplace and a deck so I could just hang out and chat. But we're doing that here, and it's a delightful ambiance, I will say. So thank you very much for inviting me here. I really thought that we could do more of a question and answer related to Measure J. Obviously, that Measure J is on the ballot. It's a contentious issue. There's a lot of emotion and a lot of angst about it on both sides of the issue. And as a county official and a public servant, I am not in a position to take a position on either side of the issue, but I'm happy to discuss and answer questions about how it may impact our department. Because the Department of Agriculture Weights and Measures is identified in the language of the measure as being responsible for enforcing Measure J should it pass. We'd have to do some staffing up, and we're also identified not only as an enforcement agency for regulating the number of animals and the essentially the husbandry practices of these entities, these livestock entities in the county that may or may not be defined as an AFO or a CAFO according to EPA's definition and their confinement practices. Yes, sir.
Can I just ask what AFO and CAFO are?
An animal feeding operation is an AFO, AFO, and a CAFO is a confined animal feeding operation. They're both definitions from the Environmental Protection Agency, and they deal with the number of animals, first of all, and then the number of animals that are confined for a 45-day or longer period in any 12-month time frame. And then depending on whether or not you discharge waste to a surface water that is a jurisdictional surface water of the federal government and the state. You could move out of the AFO and into the CAFO. And then there are some ancillary considerations to be made if you are also involved in other types of crop production, perennial or annual for any period of the year that could actually identify you as not an AFO or a CAFO. But in the big picture, what would need to happen should the measure pass is for our department to first acquire a great deal of general fund support from the county leadership to staff up, because we already have quite a list of mandates that we're responsible for and contracts that we are responsible for generating revenue to run our department. And so this would be a really, really heavy burden on the general fund and taxpayers' money to enforce what would have to become an ordinance. If it passes, it would force the County Board of Supervisors to promulgate an ordinance prohibiting this type of agriculture in the county. And then we would need to staff up with our estimate is 5 inspectors, a program manager, an accounting tech, a department analyst, and then senior office assistant, maybe 2, to be able to prepare what is identified in the measure as a complaint line, a way to lodge complaints, a way to keep track of who's filing complaints, and then how we're responding to them. And it also in the measure, the Agricultural Commissioner's Office or the Department of Ag Weights and Measures, as we are referred, would be responsible for retraining employees that are displaced as a result of this measure and ordinance, so that they could find alternative jobs in agriculture or elsewhere, which is really far outside of our wheelhouse. It's really something that is characteristic of the California Employment Development Department. And so we would probably need to lean really heavily on support from human services and health services to make everything work. Yes, sir.
John Laughlin, super helpful. One of the questions in reading the actual measure, you've partially answered. Has the county estimated the annual cost of enforcement of this measure?
Well, we've
I mean,
estimated.
you've clearly, as you articulated, there's head count. And so we know what the positions are. You assume you've got an average annual compensation figure. So do you have a rough sense?
Yes, in the Department of Agriculture Weights and Measures, the estimate was $1.6 million additional general fund monies that our department would need. Now, I can't speak for the Economic Development Collaborative. I cannot speak for the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, or the clerk, recorder, assessor. Who will obviously be involved for reassessing properties, values, for identifying the tax base, because you have to understand, if people are agricultural practitioners and they are subject to potential Williamson Act land conservation contracts and tax breaks, that there will be an impact, whether it's a dramatic increase or a slight increase. And then you have the cost of retraining people and the impact that might have on.
It's fair to assume that this is a low multi-million-dollar annual cost to enforce this measure.
That is correct. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Jill, do you
May I-
have?
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, John.
May I ask another question? The ballot measure references in the list of recitations that there are over a dozen CAFOs presently operating in Sonoma County. And I'm curious if you have any sense of how many would be considered large and how many medium and how many in total.
That's a question that I've been asked several times now by media inquiries to the county. The Coalition to End Factory Farming identifies somewhere between 11 and 21, depending on whether they're large or medium. You know, the Sonoma County Farm Bureau identifies a great deal more because of impacts related to you know, supply chain businesses and the fallout, if you will. I'm not gonna say how many, because the answer that I've been providing to media inquiries is that it really doesn't matter how many either side of this argument states are there, because once a measure passes, we basically start from scratch, and our department needs to go and identify every livestock operator in the county to ascertain how many animals all of them have. And then understand what their husbandry practice is and what the number of days of confinement is in any 12-month period, and whether there are alternate cropping systems that they also participate in that would exempt them from impacts of this measure. And so we would start from zero and go look at everybody.
May I ask one last question, and then I promise I'll be quiet. I'm just curious, do you have any sense, and I realize there's a range of, as you said, you know, the organization that's sponsoring this says 11 to 20. Is this, do you have any sense of, are these family farms, or are they truly corporate industrial production facilities?
They are family farms. They are generational family farms. And if there are any corporate associations, it is by contract.
Right.
And I will say that,
So
and I will
it's
also say that, you know, somewhere between 93 and 95% of farms west of the Mississippi are family owned and operated multi-generational farms.
Commissioner, I have a follow-up question, kind of to tail on to John Laughlin's question. Could you give us a more defined definition of the essence and the reason CAFOs were, the concept was developed in the first place? Isn't it solely an EPA and water issue? It has nothing to do with the husbandry of the animal or direct impact to anything other than the water environment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The animal feeding operation or confined animal feeding operation is a definition that was created by the Environmental Protection Agency and is related to water quality, and specifically surface water quality. There, nowhere in the definition of APO or CAFO does the EPA mention the husbandry practices or humane treatment of livestock, nor does it identify anything related to their impact on greenhouse gas emissions or sequestration or anything to that effect.
Thank you. And another question in this same vein. In thinking about CAFOs and AFOs in Sonoma County and those that the operations I know, the farms I know of, the concept of the CAFO regarding, going back to the EPA that came up with this in regards to the Clean Water Act, was it 1972? And I may have the year wrong. But how many operations in Sonoma County actually qualify and need to have those EPA permits?
And that is a really good question for the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Because the Regional Water Quality Control Board is the entity. You got to think about the State Water Board is the utility, and the Water Quality Control Board is the regulator. And the Regional Water Quality Control Boards and the State Water Quality Control Board are the agency responsible for regulating AFOs and CAFOs by providing an appropriate permit given their practices their proximity to jurisdictional waters of the US and whether or not they are discharging waste to those watersheds. And so my correspondence with the Regional Water Quality Control Board is that all of these livestock entities that are alleged to be CAFOs, I am not aware of any of them that possess a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System or NPDES permit. But I am aware that many, if not all of them, have a manure management plan through the Regional Water Quality Control Board for the appropriate storage, treatment, and discharge or management of those manure resources, whether they're spread on the land, whether they're fertigated onto pasture land in liquid systems. That's a really good question for the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Thank you very much. All right, are there any other questions from the MACs for the commissioner?
So just in terms of like general like job numbers, like there's 12 to 20 CAFOs in the county. How many jobs are we looking at?
You know, when the Board of Supervisors asked numerous departments to provide a report on the impact to the county, the maximum estimate was 1,300 jobs. And that was all of those people that were employed by livestock operations in the county that could be or alleged to be medium or large CAFOs. You needed to take those actual jobs and you needed to multiply them by 1.7 in order to understand how the collective supply chain would be impacted by the loss of those farms. Because if there's not as much of a demand on feed suppliers, veterinary suppliers, other service providers, fuel providers, haulers, transporters, then you're looking at not just the jobs on those ranches or those farms, but you're looking at jobs along the supply chain all the way up to the person stocking the shelves at the grocery store. As far as impacts go. And that's where the real ripple effect is. The other consideration I think that's important to acknowledge is that if there is a critical mass of businesses that are reduced in size or lost, then the incentive for the producers or the processors to remain in the region is less. And so they're going to go where they're in closer proximity to a critical mass to sustain their businesses. So I've heard a lot from agricultural practitioners in the livestock industry that if the large and medium-sized people go, well, then the small people end up losing out as well, because the processors they've depended on for generations now are going to leave the area. And I don't think that's illogical to consider. So
I had a question.
Yeah.
So how, of these CAFOs, how many are poultry and how many are cattle or dairy?
Potential CAFOs.
Yes.
Right.
Potential,
Good
because
point.
they don't exist yet.
Right. Well, because I only say that, I only ask because whenever I've heard conversation about Measure J, people point to the poultry situation and make a case for that. But it seems to me that the great opposition to this Measure J is rightfully from the cattle people, cattle and dairy people. And because it would affect them too, and they're doing really good husbandry and don't want to fall to have any negative consequences from this measure, which is why it's so opposed.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that that the the dairy operators are any more humane with the treatment of their animals than the poultry operators, because this would impact poultry operators that raise broilers, so meat birds, and also laying hens, or egg producing operations. And each of these entities are responsible for managing their manure resources. And you're talking about a huge and very lucrative byproduct of livestock production in Sonoma County. We consider the supply chain related directly to those businesses, but also what about the landscape amendment suppliers in the county that depend on a source of manure? I know of 2 large scale poultry producers in the county. When I say large scale, it's all relative, because if you look at the definition of farm size in USDA's definition, it's based on the size of the business, but also the income. And most Sonoma County farms are small to mid-sized according to USDA's definition of farm size. So we have to think relatively about those kinds of definitions. But these entities either have a direct outlet for their manure, or they are actually drying and pelletizing it themselves, and inside. So they're not necessarily discharging, nor are they necessarily directly adjacent to a jurisdictional waterway, such that they would pose any threat to discharging directly to a water course. So, I mean, that's just my experience. I've been working at the Department of Ag Weights and Measures for 20 years, and I've spent a lot of time inspecting the shell eggs for quality over that time, and been on these farms. So
A follow-up question to that is, approximately how many poultry facilities are there in Sonoma County? 10?
Yeah, there's probably more than that, but
Okay.
if we're talking about commercial facilities,
Not
direct to consumer, small scale,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so, and how many dairies are there?
We probably have about 52 left in
Okay.
Sonoma County,
And how many cattle ranches are there? 200?
how many cattle ranches are there? I would say there's probably 75 commercial beef cattle operations.
If we go down to small scale, 5 acres here or there, though, could be.
100.
I mention that only because I think that the voices being amplified I believe the poultry farms are all out there on this, and as are all the dairies. And I think that might be what Jill was referring to. It's just a scale of numbers.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think when you look at trade associations and industry associations, the tip of the spear is the dairy industry, and either edge at the point, or the marginal point is poultry on one side and beef operations on the other. I think it's interesting too, also, that when you read the measure, you see that in the EPA's definition, horses and sheep operations are also included in the EPA's definition. And I'm at a loss to understand why this measure does not include equestrian facilities and sheep.
Or goats too.
Especially if we're concerned about water quality, greenhouse gas emissions, husbandry. It just seems a little peculiar to leave those out, when if it's really holistically aimed at that, then we should be looking at everybody. I mean, if I'm a regulator, you don't pick and choose the winners of the implementation of regulation. Everybody gets looked at holistically and treated the same way. One other thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and I've been asking media about when they inquire about this topic, is there's a huge equity component to this, social equity, that has not been looked at. at all. There are, when we're talking about, the demographics of our county, and we're talking about underrepresented populations. There's a lot of our underrepresented populations that find work and employment familially in agriculture, where one parent works somewhere and the other parent works somewhere, and the familial income comes from agriculture. And we're not looking at the impact of the passing of this measure on the displacement of families. If both of your parents' income comes from being employed by a dairy operation or a poultry operation or any one of the supply chain businesses, and they lose their job, then the retraining phase and the finding a new job in agriculture, finding a new job elsewhere, is probably a pretty traumatic experience, or will be, for some of these people. In addition to that, I said this at an economic summit in February at the Green Center at Sonoma State University, excuse me, not at the Green Center. And it was like, we want our food to be as local as possible. And shouldn't most of it as much as possible come from here? Because if we lose the ability to have affordable, and I'll say eggs and chicken are some of the most affordable and wholesome sources of protein in the world. If we lose the ability to have those things produced locally, and they're going to have to come from somewhere else, and they're probably going to look the same, but they're not going to cost the same. And in addition to that, they're going to have to travel many more miles, hundreds of more miles, to get to our points of purchase and onto our families in this county's tables, not just this county, but our adjacent counties. And what impact will that have on food security for the people that are now being displaced by what is deemed, a seemingly altruistic measure? And we're not talking about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would also think that if the measure passed, we would get those chicken eggs and all those things from a more industrial operation, probably from the Central Valley. If we don't have it here, and I don't know anybody who's talked about that at all.
No,
where we're gonna get. Yeah.
Well, I would say, and I don't know the facts, but I think I would look at the average dairy herd size in other counties and other states, and compare that to the average herd size in Sonoma County. And the one thing that kind of I can't stop thinking about is a comment that was made in the KRCB broadcast last night in the debate. And it was an assertion made by the Center, or the Coalition to End Factory Farming. It was related to, well, this is the best place to do it because this place doesn't have real problems like other parts of the state. And for me, that was like, well, why is this the best place to do this then? And I'm not choosing sides right now. I'm just trying to look at this as objectively as possible and say, well, isn't the best place to do something like that in the place where the problems are the largest?
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Scott Foster, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you for coming. This has been extremely enlightening. I really appreciate the scope and detail of your answers.
I'm going to hold off on a couple of questions I have. I'm going to let our audience in person go first. So, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium and sharing it with Andrew.
Oh,
Thank you. You said something that.
Go your name again, dear.
Chris Kilgore.
Thank you.
you said something that caught my attention. When you were asked how many dairy farms there are. And you said there were 52 left. How bad, were there 100 2 years ago? Were there, I'm a little concerned about that.
Well, there were approximately 55 2 years ago. And there was approximately 67 between here and Marin 10 years ago.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And in 1970, do you know how many dairies there were?
I wasn't born then.
Oh, you young.
Well, I think that was something like closer to 100 and something dairies in the 1970s. Well over 100 dairies in the county of Sonoma. All right, Mr. Farmer, please step up and you have to announce your name.
Scott Farmer, Timber Co.
Yeah.
A couple of things, lest we forget Gravenstein Apple in Sebastopol and the Barlow that processed them. All the apples go to Washington State now for processing, and a lot of the apples are grapes. There's an impression I have, that the Water District Board manages the quality of the water around it. And so that's regulated and monitored. In terms of animal husbandry and proper care of animals, and that's also regulated, correct?
That is correct.
So if those are the two main issues, they're already covered. And the only one left seems to be just it's big.
You just asked my question, right? What would be the point of this measure going through if we're already doing this very good work?
And if it's being monitored and it's things are being done well, the scales aren't, from what I understand, aren't huge. It just seems a misplacement of and doubling the effort that already exists. It matters.
Thank you. Anyone else live that has a question for the commissioner?
I just want to respond
Yep.
to Mr. Farmer's question.
Please.
So the National Organic Program, so 89% or greater of our dairies in Sonoma County are organic. Nearly all of our commercial poultry is organic. Our broiler producers in the county were the first organic poultry producers in the world. And the National Organic Program, when they promulgated and codified their standards on what it means to be organic, had an animal husbandry and humane treatment component to their certification, which all accredited certifiers by the National Organic Program must adhere to and audit producers for. So if you have not only organic production and certification and regulation being audited for the humane treatment of your animals, but then, some of those entities go beyond that, and you can see humane certification on their packaging where they add another audit trail and another certification to their books. Those are all records that those agricultural practitioners have to keep. They have to monitor how many days their cows are outside on pasture. They're required to be outside on pasture 180 days a year if you're an organic dairy. So when it comes to humane treatment of livestock, I am at a loss to understand with the nature of our markets here in Sonoma County why that is viewed as an issue. But it's not something that we regulate. It's something that's regulated by the State Department of Food and Agriculture and the USDA. And then in 2008, the voters enacted Proposition 2. which was an increase in space requirements for laying hens, broilers, pork, and veal. And then you crank it up a notch to Prop 12, which added to the space required for veal, the space required for laying hens, and gestating sows in the pork production industry. It's also interesting to note that California has less than 1% of the nation's pork production. Pork is not produced in a commercial capacity in California. So when you take that out of the picture, you're really talking about veal and laying hens. And guess what? There really aren't any veal producers in Sonoma County. You know, so when we talk about, you know, certification and humane treatment of animals, like you said, Mr. Farmer, I think we have it covered. And so, you know, I really think that the crux of this measure is surrounding water quality. But that's not how the measure is written. But it is nevertheless something that, you know, we will be happy to at the will of the board, based on how the voters vote, be prepared to regulate if we have to. You know, and you know, this my dream job. When I started working at the Ag Commissioner's office 20 years ago, I said, I'd love to be an Ag Commissioner one day, because this is what a rewarding and fulfilling job. But, you know, I'll sure give the career choice a different flavor. If that's the direction we need to lean.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Don't go anywhere. Okay, because I have a couple of questions for you. Just real quick, I want to circle back to Proposition 12, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but Proposition 12 also states that you may not bring any pork or any of those products that you listed into the state of California if they are not grown by the state of California's rules wherever they are raised, correct?
Yeah, they have to be Prop 12 compliant, and Prop 12 was actually taken by the pork producers of the US to the Supreme Court. And it was determined that it was not an infringement or a take on their business. It just meant that, hey, if you want to sell pork in the state of California, you have to provide the according amount of space dictated by Prop 12.
Thank you. And are there exceptions to Proposition 12 in the state of California? Were there entities that were given a pass that don't have to adhere to when they purchase, let's just say when they purchase pork, that they don't have to adhere to the California guidelines?
None that I'm aware of.
Oh my. I believe, if my understanding is that any state entity or any child nutrition program does not have to adhere to those same qualities. Have you heard anything about that?
I am not aware.
Okay, I'll look into that more myself. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
I will say that, you know, even Prop 12 certification is required for the people who raise the pigs that your children buy to show them at the fair.
Right, absolutely.
The fair animals are exempted because they're not breeding sows in case pigs, and they are not layers in the case of hens. They are projects, special projects for students and for 4-H and FFA kids. But the people who they purchase those animals from do have to be Prop 12 certified.
Correct.
And Prop 12 certification is acquired through working with a an accredited certifier, accredited by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And if you visit the California Department of Food and Agriculture, Animal Health and Food Safety Services branch, you will direct yourself to the animal care program, and the animal care program has a list of accredited certifiers in the state of California to provide Prop 12 certification.
Thank you. Rounding back to Measure J.
Measure what?
Measure J. Yeah. Quickly, I know this is not your wheelhouse issue, but housing. There has anyone that you know of looked at the housing implication, all the housing that's going to be lost from for our most vulnerable population?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because right now Permit Sonoma is working on the housing element, which is one of the first parts of the general plan amendments and revisions that are being conducted right now. And Permit Sonoma has reached out to myself and other ag entities in the county to get information on their thresholds. And of course, if you look in the housing element of Sonoma County's general plan, you will see that there are thresholds on the number of acres of plant agriculture, the number of animals for livestock agriculture that need to be met to permit agricultural employee housing on one's property. And I would guess, and this is a question for Permit Sonoma, but I would guess that if you lost the ability to meet those thresholds, that you would lose the ability to provide agricultural employee housing on your property.
Yep.
And we all know how important and how much of a pinch we're in this county when it comes to housing, not just in urban areas, but on the urban fringe and in rural areas. You were just speaking earlier, sir, about Timber Cove and the lack of affordable housing. If ranching is big in Timber Cove and forestry and that, well, you probably want to be able to support agricultural housing on your property if you can.
Vineyards.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can think of one operation with 7 farm housing situations, and they'd all be gone. And so it's 7 families. That's
Yeah.
just one of them. Thank you very much. Yes, another question?
Just to chime in, so you're saying is if
Mr. Farmer.
Scott Farmer, Timber Cove, if you eliminate the larger entities, you're automatically reducing housing units.
The capacity to support housing, yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah. We couldn't legally rent them out to anybody but ag workers. That would be the permit. Anyone else on the board? Yes.
Hi.
What's your name again, sir?
John Laughlin. And
Where are you from?
I'm from Bodega Bay.
Sorry, I'm catching on real quick.
Well done, well done.
Well done. Commissioner Smith, this has been absolutely illuminating, and I'm appalled at my own ignorance of what the implications are. And so my question is, I suspect in the community that I live in, I would suspect a lot of people are really not focused yet on this issue. They're certainly seeing the signage. That's obviously, all the farms that surround our community are being very expressive about their opposition. But my question is, it's these facts that you have brought to the table that I think many citizens are not aware of. And so the question is, are you aware of any organizations that are trying to distribute this information, engage the public in a fuller understanding of the issue? Those are the kinds of the resources that I'd like to take back to my neighbors and say, don't take my word for it. Go.
A LeVar Burton-esque quote. Don't take my word for it.
Yeah. Do you have any off the top of your head?
The Sonoma County Farm Bureau. California Alliance for Family Farmers. Any of the resource conservation districts. California Dairymen.
Yeah.
Also, Preserve Rural Sonoma County
Yep,
put out a very good letter.
yep, the University of California Cooperative Extension.
Great. So
Yeah, and
that's
any one of those entities that you choose to reach out to, California Cattlemen's Association, Cattle Women's Association, Wool Growers Association, they don't have a dog in the fight, but they have a dog in the fight, and not that it's a fight,
Right.
but it's
No,
definitely.
it's really the issue of, if these, certainly some of the organizations you reference, they've got websites, there's a place for, to suggest that people go and read about.
Oh, yeah,
the others,
absolutely.
the hidden side of this issue.
And meet the people that are impacted or
Yeah.
potentially impacted, because I can tell you right now, if you connect with the Farm Bureau, they're gonna ask who you wanna talk to. And they're gonna try and connect you with a poultry farmer, or a dairy rancher, or a cattle rancher, and, I think what you kind of bring to light is that we do a really good job in the state of California educating school children on where their food comes from and what agriculture looks like. And we do that until they're in 5th grade. And then we don't talk to them again about it. And we hope that they understand that from their parents and their family friends that may be involved in agriculture, and that hopefully they get to learn an unbiased and objective understanding of what agriculture is in college. But the only other time that we start talking about educating our populace is when something like this happens. And that's one of the things that I told the Board of Supervisors when they were interviewing me for the position of Ag Commissioner, was that never has there been a more important time to educate our adult population on what contemporary agriculture looks, sounds, and smells like. And I think that is of the utmost importance this year. Not necessarily because of this measure, but because there are a lot of spears pointed at agriculture. Whether you're talking about labor, whether you're talking about pesticide use, whether you're talking about nutrients, whether you're talking about greenhouse gases. And it's, I'm at a loss as to why people don't see more the pioneering innovation that agriculture and forestry represent in, managing resources and being stewards of the land. There wouldn't be multi-generational farms throughout the Western US if these folks were not stewards. And, we wouldn't be having multi-generational livestock operations if people didn't care for the animals. So, I don't want to show my hand.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
you're welcome.
Any other questions from the MACs? All right, thank you. We have two more audience questions. Yes, unfortunately, I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to step up here because the meeting owl.
It's just real quick. Chris Kilgore, who benefits from this? I mean, who's promoting this? It sounds like there isn't anybody promoting it.
Animal rights.
So I would encourage you to, if you want to know who's promoting this, I would encourage you to look up the Coalition Against Factory Farming, to look up DEX, and look at their mission statement.
What is that, D?
I don't think I'm gonna.
I'm not aware of what you're
Oh,
talking about.
Okay. Anyway, I'll round back to you before we leave, because I want to get the name of it straight in my head.
Pamphlet, so I can read who put the issue forward, but, and also just one other thing, all those no on J signs, they're meaningless.
The no on J sign?
Yeah, they give you no information, they're just incredibly vague.
Well, the signs are to alert you to a problem.
Yeah, but.
We need more engagement.
We need a noonj.com.
Well, there is.
There is.
Okay.
There's, if you wanna know.
It needs to be on the sign.
So I will
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
the signs, so these materials are available here. The yes on for edification to improve.
Yeah.
Balance. The yes on J website is endfactoryfarming.vote. So if you want to know who's paying for it, and that kind of stuff.
Get any,
Endfactoryfarming.vote. VOTE.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Farmer.
South Farmer Timber Cove. I just wanted to say that there is nobody that cares more about their land than farmers and ranchers. And nobody cares more about their animals than the people that earn their income and take care of these animals.
Yeah.
And they are our neighbors, and we need to stick together.
Thank you very much. All right, Che, is there anyone online that has a question or a comment for the commissioner?
We have no hands raised. This is the moment to raise your hand if you're online. No hands raised.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andrew, Commissioner Smith. I appreciate your presence and the time you took to come all the way out here. I know that you had other things you could have done with your evening, and you are not paid to be here. This is just you coming out and helping us and informing us. Thank you very, very much for that.
It's an honor. Thank you.
It was amazing.
Yes. All right, unless I've missed something, is it time to adjourn the meeting? All right, is there a move to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We need a motion.
Anyone opposed?
Wait, who made the first motion from the?
Jill.
Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth, sorry.
And
Chill a second.
Any abstentions? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, well, my question is.
Actually, wait,
Okay,
Chair.
we had.
That was the best lecture I've heard in a long time.
I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah.
So, hold on. Elizabeth, you're an alternate. You can't. I'm so sorry. All right, we're gonna have to redo that. Reopening the meeting briefly for adjournment. All
So
right.
moved.
Meeting closed.
No, we need a second. We need a second. We got Brian.
We had
Ginny.
We had Ginny.
Brian,
Brian.
okay.
Ginny.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you for taking that.
Okay, so serious. Oh, my God.
I got my property at 93.
This is gonna be on YouTube.
And the idea is
sometime, right?
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Half as much.
Cause I'm gonna, well,
We will absolutely.